So this is basically the summary of the formula, all right, just like simple sentence and compound sentence, right? Just like I told you just now, complex sentence is basically independent clause plus subordinating conjunction plus dependent clause. Independent, dependent. All right. Okay. Now, this one, if you start the sentence with the independent clause and end it with a dependent clause, all right? Now, if you start the sentence with oh, if you start the sentence with a dependent clause, all right, you need to have a comma between the clauses. Okay, again, the subordinating conjunction will always come before dependent clause, so it will always be before it. So if you start the sentence with a dependent clause, then automatically the subordinating conjunction will be the first word in that sentence. So subordinating conjunction followed by a dependent clause, comma, and then independent clause. Okay, again, a dependent clause is not a complete idea or thought. So here are a lot of examples of subordinating conjunctions. Actually, we have after, although, although as, or as if, as long as, because, before, even if, even though, if only, and the list goes on, right? So all these are actually subordinating conjunctions, and they can be used to be put or to combine two clauses which are independent and dependent clause, right? Okay, now if you notice the last one, I put this one, which is excuse me, relative pronoun, that, which, who, right? Although in the formula I only put subordinating conjunction, all right, but there are times that you can actually use relative pronoun to combine two clauses, so to combine dependent and independent clause, right? So if you see one of the relative pronouns, that, which, or who, and they are basically combining two clauses or two clauses, independent and dependent, it basically means that the sentence itself is actually a complex sentence, right? I know that it's like too much for you to remember all of these, but again, a shortcut that I can suggest for you is that what you should do, or what I suggest you should do, is to remember this, to remember all of these conjunctions. All you have to do is just to memorize the fanboys, the coordinating conjunctions that you need to use in compound sentence. It's easier to remember those conjunctions. So in other words, other than fanboys, the conjunctions would be used in complex sentences. Easy, right? Okay, let's look at examples here. Examples of complex sentences. So the first one, when he handed in his homework, comma, he forgot the hand he forgot to hand the teacher the last page. So when he handed his homework, when is the subordinating conjunction. He handed in his homework is basically the dependent clause, comma, comma, you need to have a comma because you are starting the sentence with a D, all right, sorry, with a dependent clause followed by independent followed by an independent clause, forgot to hand the teacher the last page. Excuse me. The second example is the teacher returned the homework after she noticed the error. Alright, this one, the sentence is started with an independent clause. So the teacher returned the homework. Now, because it is started with an independent clause, you don't need comma in the middle. Alright, so there's no comma, and then followed by a subordinating conjunction, which is after, and then the dependent clause, she noticed the error. Okay, right, let's move on to the next one. The students are studying because they have a test tomorrow. The students are studying, independent, because subordinating conjunction, they have a test tomorrow, the dependent clause. Okay, and the last one, after they finish studying, after subordinating conjunction, they finish studying, is basically the dependent clause, comma, again because the sentence is starting with a dependent clause. Jack and Maria went to the movies. Jack and Maria went to the movies is the independent clause. Okay, so let's look at the exercises here. Identify the dependent clause in each complex sentence. So we need to look for a dependent clause. So easy. Okay, how to know this, or how to identify it is a dependent clause? Remember, there is always a subordinating conjunction before the dependent clause. So let's look at the first one. Because is actually one of the subordinating conjunction. Indirectly, it was reading is the dependent clause. Number 2, when I feel sick, I do not go to school. When is a subordinating conjunction. Indirectly, I feel sick is the dependent clause. Mark is not going since I never invited him. Alright, for this one, although there's no comma, so when there's no comma, it basically means that the sentence is started with an independent clause. So dependent clause should be at the back of the sentence. And again, to make it easier for you to identify a dependent clause, it will be preceded by, or there will be a subordinating conjunction before the clause. So in this case, since. So I never invited him is the dependent clause. Number 4, George played football because Jean went shopping. Alright, so this one automatically, I think you know this one. So we have because as the subordinate conjunction. Automatically, Jean went shopping is the dependent clause. And last but not least, number 5, if you want a pizza, you need to order it now. Okay, this one you have a comma. It means that the sentence is started with a dependent clause, and before dependent clause there will be a subordinate conjunction, in this case if, and it means that you want a pizza, or you want a pizza is basically the dependent clause. That's easy.